When I was around 8 or 10 years old, Christmas was the most magical time of the year for me. My family lived in a cozy two-story house nestled in a quiet neighborhood. Every December, our home would transform into a winter wonderland. We would string up lights that twinkled like stars, hang festive garlands, and place our large Christmas tree in the corner of the living room for all to see. The tree was always adorned with shimmering ornaments, tinsel, and a star that gleamed proudly at the top. On Christmas Eve, our tradition was to visit my grandparents' house for dinner, with plans to visit my uncle's place on Christmas Day. That particular Christmas Eve was no different. It was filled with laughter, the warm glow of my grandparents' fireplace, and the irresistible smell of my grandmother's cooking. The dinner table was laden with roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and an assortment of pies. The adults exchanged stories and jokes while we kids ran around the house, trying to outdo each other with tales of what Santa might bring. By the time we left, my heart was brimming with excitement and anticipation. When we returned home, the cold night air bit at my cheeks as I stepped out of the car. The house looked inviting with its colorful Christmas lights glowing softly in the darkness. Inside, everything was as it should be, the stockings hung by the fireplace, the tree standing tall in its corner, and the scent of pine mingling with the faint aroma of gingerbread cookies my mom had baked earlier. I was too excited to sleep, imagining the surprises waiting for me under the tree the next morning. My parents eventually tucked me into bed, and I stared at the glow in the dark stars on my ceiling, counting them in a futile attempt to fall asleep. Finally, I drifted off, but my slumber didn't last long. I woke suddenly, the kind of wakefulness that comes with an unexplained urgency. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the heater. My bedside clock read 2 o'clock. I rubbed my eyes, wondering what had stirred me. Then I heard a faint noise coming from downstairs. It was a soft rustling sound, like someone moving things around. At first, I thought it might be my parents putting out presents. My heart leapt with the thought that maybe I had caught Santa in the act. Curiosity overcame me. I slipped out of bed, my heart already racing. I tiptoed to the staircase that overlooked the living room. The house was mostly dark, except for the gentle, colorful glow of the Christmas tree lights. They cast flickering shadows across the walls, making the familiar room seem eerie and unfamiliar. I peered over the railing, and that's when I saw him. A man, someone I didn't recognize, was standing near the tree. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and his face was obscured by the shadows. He moved slowly, almost deliberately, as if he were inspecting the ornaments. My breath caught in my throat. Panic surged through me. I backed away from the railing as quietly as I could and bolted down the hall to my parents' room. "There's someone in the house," I whispered frantically, shaking my dad awake. His eyes widened as he processed what I had said. He sprang out of bed, grabbing the baseball bat he kept under the bed for emergencies. My mom, still groggy but alarmed, picked up the phone to call 911. I huddled next to her, clutching her arm tightly as my dad crept downstairs. The minutes that followed felt like hours. I strained to hear any sound from below. Then the silence was shattered by the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. My dad's voice boomed, shouting at someone to stop. I ran to the top of the stairs just in time to see a shadowy figure disappearing through the broken living room window. The intruder was gone, leaving behind a shattered window, scattered ornaments, and a terrifying memory. The police arrived shortly after, combing through the house and yard for clues. They confirmed that someone had been inside but found no fingerprints or evidence of who it might have been. Luckily, nothing was stolen and no one was hurt. Yet, the thought of a stranger being in our home on what should have been a joyful night haunted me for years. Even now, every Christmas Eve, I find myself double-checking the locks before going to bed, unable to shake the memory of that silent intruder. Fast forward to my mid-20s, and Christmas still held its charm for me, though the magic had shifted into nostalgia. One particular holiday season, I had another unsettling experience that reminded me of the fragility of safety. It started innocuously enough. A day of shopping at the mall. The place was bustling with holiday cheer families taking photos with Santa, shoppers laden with bags, and the air filled with the sound of carols. After several hours, I finally finished and headed to the parking lot with my car loaded with gifts. The parking lot was a sea of cars, their surfaces glistening with the frost of a chilly December evening. I found my car and loaded the bags into the trunk, my breath visible in the cold air. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, so I let it go to voicemail. Moments later, I received a notification. Curious, I played the message. The voice on the other end was male, cold, and deliberate. "I'm driving right behind you. You should have answered the phone." A chill ran down my spine. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I glanced in my rearview mirror. Sure enough, there was a car following me. Its headlights glared in the darkness, and although I couldn't make out the driver, I felt their gaze on me. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence, just someone driving in the same direction. But as I turned onto quieter streets, the car stayed with me, maintaining an unnervingly close distance. I tried to stay calm, my mind racing through possibilities. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was nothing. But the voice on the voicemail played on repeat in my head, each word dripping with malice. I decided to test my theory. At the next intersection, instead of turning toward my apartment, I made an unexpected left. The car followed. I took another random turn. It followed again. My heart was pounding now, each beat echoing in my ears. I needed to act. I didn't want to lead this person to my home, so I drove to a well-lit gas station that I knew stayed open late. I pulled in and parked near the entrance, hoping the cameras and potential witnesses would deter whoever was following me. The car drove past slowly, its headlights illuminating my car for a brief moment before disappearing into the night. I sat there for a while, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. "You can't hide forever." That was enough for me. I called the police and explained what had happened. They sent an officer to meet me at the gas station and escorted me home. Although nothing more came of the incident, it left me shaken. For weeks, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder or feel a surge of anxiety whenever I saw an unfamiliar car behind me. Christmas, once a time of pure joy and wonder, had taken on a new layer of caution and unease. Despite these experiences, I still find solace in the holiday season. The warmth of family gatherings, the beauty of twinkling lights, and the promise of a new year remind me that even in moments of fear, there is light to be found. Yet, the memories of those nights linger, a chilling reminder that the world isn't always as safe as it seems. Panic began to set in. My mind raced with questions, each more terrifying than the last. Who was this person? How did they get my number? What did they want from me? My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I knew I couldn't let fear take over. I decided to act as though I wasn't scared, even though I was trembling inside. Taking a deep breath, I asked my phone's virtual assistant for directions to the nearest police station. The route recalculated, and I forced myself to focus on the road, glancing occasionally at the rearview mirror. The car behind me remained close, almost tailgating. Every turn I made, it followed. The glowing headlights burned into my eyes like an unrelenting predator. As I neared the station, I turned sharply into the brightly lit parking lot. The other car slowed for a moment, as if debating its next move, then abruptly sped off into the night, disappearing like a phantom. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The fluorescent lights of the police station provided little comfort as I scanned my surroundings, convinced the car might return at any second. Slowly, my heartbeat began to settle. Once I was sure the coast was clear, I cautiously started my drive home. Relief washed over me when I pulled into my driveway. The familiar sight of my house, its warm, welcoming glow against the dark sky, felt like a safe haven. But the feeling was short-lived. As I stepped out of the car, my phone rang again. My stomach clenched. It was the same number. For a moment, I debated letting it ring, but my curiosity and a lingering sense of dread got the better of me. Against my better judgment, I answered. "You shouldn't have gone to the police station," the voice sneered, low and menacing. "I know where you live." I froze. The phone nearly slipped from my hand as terror took hold of me. I turned toward the street, my heart plummeting when I saw headlights approaching. A car slowly rolled into my driveway, its engine humming like a predator's growl. A tall figure stepped out, dressed in a dark coat with a baseball cap pulled low over their face. I couldn't make out their features, but the air seemed to grow colder, heavier with his presence. Adrenaline kicked in. I rushed inside, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher's calm voice was a stark contrast to my frantic explanation. Outside, the man approached the porch, his footsteps crunching against the gravel. He tried the door handle, jiggling it with deliberate slowness, as if savoring my fear. "Stay on the line," the dispatcher said. "Officers are on their way." Minutes felt like hours. The man knocked on the door, a sharp, rhythmic sound that echoed through the house. He didn't speak, didn't call out, just stood there, a dark silhouette against the porch light. My eyes darted between the door and the window, every nerve in my body screaming for me to hide, to run, to do anything but stand there. Finally, the wail of sirens broke through the oppressive silence. The man stepped back, his movements slow and deliberate, as if mocking me. When the police arrived, they questioned him and eventually issued a citation for trespassing. He left without a fight, but his calm demeanor was almost more unsettling than if he had resisted. The officers assured me he wouldn't return, but their words did little to ease my mind. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every shadow on the wall, felt like a threat. I never found out who he was, how he had gotten my number, or why he had chosen to follow me. To this day, I'm haunted by the memory of that chilling voice and the sight of him standing on my porch, his intentions forever a mystery. A couple of years later, my wife and I hosted Christmas at our house for the first time. It was a big event, with about 15 to 20 family members filling our home. The air buzzed with laughter, chatter, and the delicious aroma of holiday cooking. It was the perfect picture of warmth and celebration, a stark contrast to the icy landscape outside. Snow blanketed the ground, glittering under the pale winter sun. The day started perfectly, but it didn't stay that way. Around 11:30 a.m., as guests were still arriving, one of my cousins pulled me aside. His expression was uneasy, his voice low. "Hey," he said, glancing out the window toward the backyard. "I think I saw someone out there near the tree line." I frowned, following his gaze. The backyard stretched wide, bordered by a thick line of trees that seemed to go on forever. It was beautiful in the daylight, but something about it always felt a little eerie. Stepping outside with him, I saw the footprints. They were fresh, leading from the woods to the edge of the yard. "Probably just a neighbor or something," I said, though the unease creeping into my chest suggested otherwise. We decided to keep an eye on the yard, casually glancing out the window every so often, while trying not to alarm anyone. Hours passed without incident. The party was in full swing, and I began to relax. That is, until late afternoon. I was refilling drinks in the kitchen when I glanced out the window and froze. There he was, a man standing at the edge of the woods. He was tall, his hood pulled up to obscure his face. He wasn't moving, wasn't doing anything, just standing there, staring at the house. "Hey!" I yelled, dropping the pitcher and rushing to call my cousin. By the time we ran outside, the man had vanished into the trees. We searched the area, but there was no sign of him, not even fresh footprints in the snow. My wife noticed the commotion and grew concerned. We decided not to let the incident ruin the day, but once everyone had left, we locked all the doors and windows, double-checking them before going to bed. The next morning, I stepped outside to survey the yard. My breath caught in my throat. The footprints from the day before were still there, but now there were new ones. They led from the woods to our house and back again. Someone had been here during the night, walking right up to our home while we slept. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Why hadn't they tried to break in? What had they been looking for? Questions swirled in my mind, but answers never came. Though the man never returned, the memory of his silent presence lingers. Every Christmas season, as the snow begins to fall and the nights grow longer, I find myself glancing out the window, half expecting to see him standing there once more, watching, waiting,